Hello. Happy Sunday afternoon to you. It's me, Verge, here on Divinity Ranch, which you may have noticed that I changed my channel name back to, because I want all of the things that I'm creating to fall under the umbrella, the canopy, if you will, of Divinity Ranch. It's like a production company, and maybe On the Verge will be one of my segments within that, and I want it all to be Divinity Ranch. So thank you for joining me at Divinity Ranch today at some of my dear friends' cabin up on the South Fork of Cody, Wyoming, this beautiful Sunday. I've been reading one of my dear friend's books, and perhaps you've read it or heard of it, Anatomy of the Spirit by Caroline Myss, The 7 Stages of Power and Healing. And it had me thinking, last night I was sleeping in my friend's bus. They have a really cool converted bus. Also, just a quick segue, something really crazy happened last night, which was that a bat got into the bus while I was sleeping, and that was pretty wild considering my recent run-in with a raccoon, which can be a carrier of rabies, and having to go through getting these rabies shots, which are going well, by the way, and the doctor telling me that bats are often one of the biggest carriers of rabies, and that people often have to get rabies shots because they wake up and realize that a bat was in the room where they were sleeping. Well, last night I woke up to a bat in the bus. And just speaking of, before I go into what I really wanted to say about this, I just wonder, I feel personally like physical illnesses are often an indicator of emotional or energetic things that are asking to be noticed before they turn into a full-on illness. And so literally this morning I was like, what are all of these run-ins with almost rabies trying to tell me? Also, yes, like raccoon and bat are joining my totem, want to be near me. I have these meaningful interactions and relationships with these animals. I'm learning about them. And why all this danger of rabies, like suddenly being in my life, sort of synchronistically? And to me, rabies represents this sort of rabidness, right? Like a rabid aggravation of sort of out of control violence and aggression. So I was thinking, maybe it's a little bit of a message of alchemizing a lot of that violence and aggression that maybe exists in me and my interpretation of things, and choosing to take that fiery passion and power and violence and force and put it into an outlet of alleviation, if you will. Like, use it, and not for rabid, frothing at the mouth aggression. And that maybe it's time, I've fully felt a lot of anger and aggression about a lot of things, and it's time to maybe remember that part of that process is also alchemizing it into compassion and forgiveness. So I just wanted to start off with that, because that was something meaningful that I thought of, like, what are the chances that I'm having these back-to-back interactions with animals that are almost serving as warning signs for rabies, although I don't have rabies. So that's also just an example of sometimes how I look at things in my life as symbolic, the same way that I look at things in a dream as symbolic, because I really do believe that largely, and I think Carl Jung would have agreed with this, life is just another dream state, and everything that's happening to us is meaningful and symbolic. And whether we're right or wrong, I believe it's meaningful and important to look into the things that we're encountering both in our sleeping dreams and in our waking life, because they all have messages for us. So what I wanted to talk about and Carolyn Myss does talk in this book a lot about different illnesses being related to the different chakras and different energetic centers. I haven't read all of it. I've just been perusing it today, and I really recommend it. And this was what I wanted to talk about, because last night when I was in the bus, I had this thought of all the work that there still is to do with wanting to publish my book and all the things that I want to write, and making videos out of all of the collages of film that I have, and wanting to make music and all of these things that I desire to create. And I just had this like shift where instead of me writing the book, like the book's writing me, you know? Instead of making something happen, I am being made. And just this feeling, this like real feeling of the book is already written. And it was a knowing that the book was already written. And so it sort of changed that activation of, rather than forcing all of this to happen, that I will simply experience the process towards that which already is. And, you know, honestly, whether that's true or not, although again, I experienced it as a knowing, whether that's true or not, the feeling and experience of that process is then so much more relaxed and natural and supported. So I just say that in a way of like, the stories that we tell ourselves or the ways that we conceptualize or perceive things, like maybe sometimes it has less to do with whether it's right or wrong and more to do with how does it serve us and allow us to serve others. So on this note, I was reading today from chapter 5, which is the 5th chakra, the power of the will, and that would be our neck, our throat. And this was the part I wanted to talk about. So symbolic/perceptual connection. The symbolic challenge of the willpower chakra is to progress through the maturation of will, from the tribal perception that everyone and everything around you has authority over you, through the perception that you alone have authority over you, which is more like the heart. Well, the heart and the belly. So this is moving up through the chakras, like the tribal, everything and everyone around you has authority over you. That's like the root chakra, moving up maybe to the sacral. Through the perception that you alone have authority over you, that's to the solar plexus up to the heart. To the final perception that true authority comes from aligning yourself to God's will, which starts to happen here and then moving up to the highest chakras. So again, this progression, everyone and everything around you has authority over you, to you and you alone have authority over you, to true authority comes from aligning yourself with God's will. And I just really related with that, thinking about how I will be publishing and have begun publishing things that I've written over the past year, and this process that I've been going through, which I really feel like has been that differentiation. I mean, what psychoanalysts would call individuation, of realizing that I and I alone have power over me. And that is a very important part of the process. And I feel like before, I have made videos before where I talk about, you know, the importance of thy will be done over my will be done and the will of God in these things. And yet I could have glimpses of that. Experientially, I don't believe I can skip ahead of it. And I believe that experientially and emotionally, I was very much in a place of really feeling like everything and everyone else had power over me, which again is what Myss describes as that root chakra kind of first part of the process. And I feel like a lot of the wild way home and my therapeutic and self-discovery journey over the past year has been coming into that realization experientially, not just intellectually, coming into it experientially with the way I've chosen to live my life for a year during this process of awakening, alone on the road, well, with my animals, on the road in many, many different adventures and settings, and differentiating myself, especially from my family of origin and from my community of origin and from romantic relationships that I was in and all of these kinds of things, to finally coming back around to that feeling that I had last night before the bat. Perhaps the bat was verifying it in some way. To that feeling of like, oh yeah, like it is written, like this is God's will, Goddess's will, the cosmic will, the will, life's will, capital L. This book that is my life has already been written, and divine eyes are reading it on some level, and that awareness is lighting up my experience as it happens, and it's already been written. Again, this for me is a helpful story to tell myself. I don't need to prove if this is true or not. It actually brings me a lot of comfort to feel that it's already been written, and that my next stage in this experience is to just accept it, to say, yes, I accept what you have given me. I accept divine will. I accept cosmic will. And I'm now going to experience without resistance the work that is already laid out, that I'm already going to do anyway. It's really, I feel like in this case, and this may be right or wrong, it's just the way I'm conceptualizing it now, free will is more just how are you choosing to experience it, with acceptance or resistance, with surrender or resignation. And I just really loved this passage because it illustrates to me how all of the parts of the process are necessary. And it's not wrong. In fact, it was necessary and authentic and legitimate to go through this season and these phases where I needed to feel like I am the only one who is in charge of my will and what happens in my life and my experience of life, and that individuation and differentiation. And when that process is complete, and then again, maybe all these processes go over and over on different levels. In this case, when that process is complete, I can truly begin to move into an actual felt, embodied experience, and an experience in my own life of thy will be done, and of I surrender to divine will. I surrender to a bigger plan, and I surrender essentially to service in that. And on this note, this is another book I've been reading today. Thank you to my friend also for having this book on their bookshelf. If you've ever read any Wendell Berry, Sex, Economy, Freedom, and Community. It's really, really good. And I have a lot of interest in living in and creating a commune. I very much do want Divinity Ranch to be associated with a place, and I see it as a commune type setting. And I just wanted to relate this book to what I'm talking about, because the process of individuation is very important, and I really feel that it needs to happen on some kind of level. Perhaps not, everyone's is going to look differently and perhaps not as dramatic as my own. And yet there's no point in it for the sake of itself. It, I believe, it's necessary to go through the process of individuation to come back to how we can serve our community and the role that we can play to serve others. And I feel like this is really similar, like that. I'm not sure, for me at least, that I would have been ready without like resentment and constraint and feeling forced and just kind of feeling inauthentic, to give myself to really wanting to be ingrained in a community, to receive service in community and give service in community, if I hadn't been able to go through that process of individuation, to remember like who I am, not in relation to others. Like, it's kind of like a vision quest, like in Native American traditions and other indigenous traditions, like going out on your own through these kind of crazy trials, whether it's over the span of a week or a year or however long, to remember who you are, what you like, what you love, your own heart's desires, who you are when no one else is looking, what you want to eat when it's just you, what you want to wear when it's just you, where you want to go, how you want to walk, how you want to see the world, how you want to talk, what you want to read, all of these things. Finding ourselves, finding myself, going through this process of individuation. And once that is authentic, the point is not then to continue to live free of constraints that come with connection. Because when we commit to something or someone, to a community, to a person, to a job, there is restraint that comes with that. Options become more limited. And I believe when this can be a good thing is when we're truly doing it because we truly know ourselves and that this is what we want, not because we feel forced to. So I guess what I'm saying in this is like the process of individuation is so important, and when it's complete, it leads back to community and a life of service. Just like this process spiritually of realizing, of going through, oh, okay, I'm the only one who's in control of me. Like, I need to remember who I am again and find out, how I even want my life to look. And then that comes back around to, okay, and now I'm willing to give that life to a larger purpose, to a divine plan. And then it's authentic. It's authentic when you say, thy will be done. It's authentic when you say, yes, I am ready to devote myself to this land, this relationship, this community, and lead a life of service. Also because I actually know what my authentic gifts that I have to give and my authentic purpose is, because I have gone through that stage of remembering myself, self-examination, therapy, revisiting old wounds, individuating and differentiating and taking responsibility for one's own willpower and choices. And I am just coming to this beautiful remembrance of like, that's not the end all be all, because in the end, it is God, goddesses, Father, Mother, universes, natures, cosmoses, divine will, and it is all about community. So, like, kind of in the end, with whatever story I'm writing, I want the story to show, yes, I went off on my own, I differentiated, all of these things happened, and the point in the end is not to go off and be alone and think that it's all about my will and having that freedom to just do whatever I want to do. It's having the freedom to devote myself to authentically serving others through the guidance of divine will, because I have gone through that dark, individuated night of the soul to remember who I am. And now I can really give what I have to give in service to community. And when I say community, I include that in the largest sense of the land as well, and all living beings, plants, animals, fungus, humans, stars, all of us. So I would love to hear what you think about this, and I hope, that you check out both of these books. Honestly, if you've never read any Wendell Berry, it's very, very grounding, kind of philosophy, and I just feel like if you're on this channel, you would probably like it. And then, of course, Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Miss. Thanks for being here with me today, and I will talk to you soon.